Hi there, welcome to another episode. Today we are going to be talking about behavior. We have a fantastic guest with us here. We have Shaun Thompson, who is the Behaviour Change Coach. So it's someone who had a wonderful, such an interesting career journey. Started as a hockey player, became a PT trainer, but then also ended up in this rabbit hole of personal development and discover behavior change, discover psychology. And that's what we're going to look at. We are not necessarily talking about fitness tips and nutrition tips and how to lose weight. We're approaching health and well-being and fitness from this perspective of behavior change. And Shaun has such a wealth of knowledge to share. He really is the guy that I love following on LinkedIn. And his bio really gives you a good flavor of, what kind of approach you can expect from him. Shaun helps people lose their lockdown love handles in a way that works for them, for their body, for their situation, for where they are at. And he really creates a unique path for a body transformation, but also mind transformation that is simple to understand with an easy structure to follow and something that doesn't take over your life, because who would want that? So if you're ready to get in, let's start.
But before we get on and have a wonderful conversation with Shaun, I just want to remind you about our Patreon account where you can find us at Into Your Life. This is a place where we share all those fantastic gold nuggets. And boy, do we have a lovely one from Shaun today. And this is also where we are growing and developing a community and a space where we'll have those bonus content and all things that we can think of as we grow the Patreon account. So do come and be part of it, because by you being there with us, you will help us to create something really special. We love the space. We hope you do too. But now, let us carry on with our wonderful conversation with Shaun.
Hi there. Welcome. Today we welcome Shaun Thompson. So, hi Shaun, please tell us a bit more about yourself, who you are, what you do, what it is that brings you joy.
Yes, thank you for having me on. The behavior change coach is, as I call it, a self-acclaimed title. It's an evolution from personal training, and I don't know how far into the story we may go today, but what I've noticed that over my years of personal training is that it has a purpose, but not the purpose that people really perceive it as. And where most people struggle is a deeper root issue. And another training session, another diet, for a large majority of the population, it doesn't cut it. There's generally a reason why we're over consuming food, or that we have a bad food relationship, or we have a terrible self image relationship. And through personal training and on my own journey, I kind of fell upon the answers. And that's where I kind of love what I do now, is I really help people fix the final problem. I'm not saying it's like that. There is still work on habits and behaviors and routines that need to be formed over a period of time. But the results change since moving into coaching has been fantastic. It's been a lot more stress free. I'm a lot more energized about what I do. I was losing the love for personal training. Lockdown changed a lot for me. Hence, there was a little mention of it in the title. And we're all tweaking and testing things on LinkedIn with our headlines. So this is where I'm at the moment. But yeah, behavior change is it's deeper. It's understanding human behavior, human psychology, habits. Um, and it's just something that I just found a passion for, and I'm so glad I'm in it.
And you're in a right group, because behavior and neuroscience and psychology, that's something that we're obsessed here. We love going into understanding what's happening under here, under the skull and under the body and inside of us. But before we get into all this geekiness around how do we, really change, I'd love to go a bit more into your journey. You kind of touched on it of, where do you come from? Like, how did you ended up going into personal training? What is your relationship? What was your relationship to start with exercise, with movement, with all of the things that are related? It might be the self-image, as you mentioned, it might be the nutrition, the eating. I would love to give our listeners a bit of a perspective, because I know it a bit from your LinkedIn, but if
Hmm.
no one knows you, where you come into this plate, before you even discovered the behavior change. Could you just tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been in sport since the age of 5. I ice skated when I was 2. I played ice hockey since I was 5, and as much as I played other sports, ice hockey was always the one. I think my brother and I were both asked to make a decision around the age of 10. That's when ice hockey got a bit serious with different conferences like Southeast of England, and England trials was at 14. So it was quite a young age where we had to make a decision. Are we going all in, or are we going to keep chopping and changing between sports? So ice hockey was always my thing. I was a pro at 16. Um, but one thing I'd always struggled with throughout my, maybe not necessarily a really young age, but maybe when it was starting to become a bit more serious, was my body. You know me, I don't use weight a lot. I don't like the terminology of weight. I think it's not really relative to somebody's being and who they are as a person. But at the same time, I struggled with higher levels of body fat. And it was no fault of my own, in a sense. It was no fault of my parents. My parents were trying to fuel me and allow me to play all this sport. I was training 2 or 3 times a night with hockey. It was quite intensive. Um, but I never understood nutrition. I never understood training. I started in the gym at 14, because a lot of kids can't at a young age, but because of my level that I was at, I had special dispensation to go to the gym. Nobody taught me how to train. I just went to the gym. I just ate food because somebody said pasta was good for energy, so I ate a load of pasta. Um, and it wasn't till I say a bit later on in my career, I must have been maybe late teens, early 20s, I decided to get a personal trainer. I was like, I've been training for years now and not seeing many changes. I've been doing my best by myself, but I'm still struggling with overeating. I can't seem to lose any body fat, so I got a PT. And it was within a very short period of time that I was like, I can do this. This actually relates really well because if I PT, I'll get better at ice hockey. And then I can also help other ice hockey players. And I saw that return quite quickly. And I was in a phase of my life at the time where I didn't actually really know what I did. Maybe some of your listeners will know I didn't go to uni. I just wanted to play ice hockey. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then falling on PT, I kind of found this passion. I was so into my course. I was the only person in the course who did the pre-course. There was a pre-course before the course. I was the only one who did it. And it kind of took me down this path where I loved helping people. I loved to coach. And but what I kind of found out was after a period of time, as much as I did enjoy it, there was something missing. I'm very results based. I played in sport, right? And it's about a result. It's about a win from your performance, which then hopefully leads you to a trophy at the end of the season, and then you go again the next year. It's a results based industry, and you can see that with managers and players. If you're not performing, you're gone. And within the PT, there was something missing because you were putting all this stuff in, and it would work short term, but it wouldn't always stick. The people who made it stick it was a small number, and I would like to think many PTs would be on the similar boat to me that, because quite often people don't talk about the failures and how many people didn't stick at it. Um, and it all changed. It all changed when I retired from ice hockey, actually. I was at the time at my late career, it was semi-pro and PT. I was doing both. Neither of them were getting my full attention. I was flopping between the two. And when I finished, I was like, right, I've got to go all in on business now. I've got no excuses. It's all in time. And I put out a request on Twitter. And I won't call it X ever. It is Twitter. And I put a request out and I said, look, I'm looking for a business podcast. Can somebody help me? And somebody, I don't know who it was to this day, they put up, this is the podcast you need to listen to. This is the episode. That one episode changed my life. And I'm not exaggerating. It completely transformed the way I think, the way I behave, the person I am, all started from that one episode. Because it took me down this accidental part of self-development. I don't know if we've got big Friends fans on here. There was one episode with Chandler and Joey where he was listening to self-help to stop him smoking. He was listening. It was like, you're a strong, independent woman. You can quit smoking. That's what I thought personal development was. I didn't realize actually what it was until I started accidentally listening to this self-development podcast. Um, and then when I finished playing, I realized that some of my bad habits of over consuming food started to go away. I used to drink quite consistently Lucozades, and I used to eat flapjacks to keep me going. If anyone knows flapjacks, they are very high in calories. But they weren't the only things. I was only sleeping 4 hours a night because I'd get in from training about 1 o'clock in the morning and I was up at 5 o'clock for PT. So I needed this stuff. I've always been a believer that PT and coaching is a high energetic job. And if I'm not, I'm doing a disservice to my clients. So I sacrificed how I looked for extra energy boost. I retired, so I started to get to sleep at like 11 after getting home from work about 9:30. Some of those issues started to go away, but at that point, I didn't really notice it was lockdown because I didn't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. So now I'm getting good sleep. I would say probably 90% of my bad habits, eating habits, went away because I was sleeping properly. And honestly, for a few days, I'm like, you're an idiot. You've been PTing for, at the time, 8 years, 9 years, and you've never been able to figure it out. You've been your own worst client. And all it was just getting 2 or 3 more hours sleep. And half of your problems would go away. Some of that was stress as well, and the relationship I had with training and stuff. There was a bit more to it, but ultimately, that's when this root cause started to come clearer. It's like I followed the Men's Health magazine and I listened to so and so on Instagram, and nothing's working. Why is it not working? And I couldn't figure it out. And it was what I now call accidental intent. I fell on it by accident, but the intent of me never giving up led me to that point because I was in pursuit of finding the answer. I was able to see it and then able to change my coaching style to help my clients.
And I love that. It's just such a, genuine story and just the aha moment of it can be as simple as getting more sleep for so many things to start changing. Because yeah, we can go into so many rabbit holes and really look at, nutrition and macros and all the kind of things. We can really look at the how to build the right training program, and we can discuss if strength or if resistance or if cardio or if stretching or if mobility, like all sorts of things. What is better? We can go into gender and ages and hormones and all sorts of things. But this simple thing in our behavior and our perception of sleep, how much that on its own can really change. And I'm so glad that we had a few really good sleep experts on the podcast. So we have specific episodes about sleep and the importance of sleep and how do you get better sleep. So I'm so glad that you touched on it. And I would love then to go a little bit back into the behavior change, because here in the podcast, we are very aware of that knowledge is not necessarily the problem. Sometimes, yeah, but in today's world, as you said, there's podcasts, there's websites, there's Instagram. So the knowledge is out there. And I think lots of people will know what they should be doing. We have the feeling of like, we kind of understand what is good for us and what not. We do know that we should sleep more. We know that we should exercise or move our body. We know that we should eat better and what kind of eating better means. We kind of understand it, or finding this knowledge is not the hardest thing. But then implementing it into our routines, figuring out what habits do we have that we need to change, how to stay consistent, or how to allow ourselves to be fluctuating, and if we have unpredictable lifestyle, how to still find some sort of consistency. So can you tell me a bit more about, yeah, now you have these clients who come to you that they want to change something, they want to transform their lives, be it with, the way their body works, the way their body looks, their weight, their strength. Obviously, we can accept the whole range of reasons why people would want to work with a PT or work with someone on their health and well-being. But I'm curious then about the mind. What is it that you found in your work that is the root cause or the challenge that people find to struggle with often when it comes to then changing behavior and sticking to these behavior changes?
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer that knowledge isn't power. Knowledge times action equals power. People know what to do. That's not an area that I often struggle with and have to coach. It's the implementation of the information I give them, and whether that's trust or I think you touched on it a minute ago when you were kind of summing up what I was saying, and you were saying mobility, training, diet, da 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 da. And one of the biggest areas I come across is overwhelm. Um, there's more going on in our head than in reality. And I think you said from my headline, I've got a key point in there which it says, "I will meet you where you need to be met right now." You see it a lot in today's world. A lot of people, influencers and things like that, they're telling a story like, "I can make you this much amount of money in 30 days." Yes, because you've got hundreds of thousands of followers and you've been working for 20 years and you've got 5 people working for you, etc., etc. I love to meet people where they are right now, not where I am. I'm 14 years into my journey, if not longer. If I look back past before I was even PTing, I'm not in the same place as somebody that hasn't been a PT or understood it for 14 years. So I love to simplify everything. There's a solution for everything, in my opinion. It's just that we need to give credit to the smaller things. I am a huge advocate of the compound effect. It is the eighth wonder of the world. It really is. And I often ask my clients, okay, that's okay, you're not doing it, that's fine. How can we make this easier? And when they give me their answer, they're still quite a distance away from making it as simple as possible. So I had one client who was struggling to get his steps in. He was stuck at his desk all day, very successful salesperson, glued to his business, but just never moved. So I said, "Well, what can you do?" And he said, "Right, I'm going to get the family up at lunchtime. We're all going to walk into town and we're going to walk around town." I was like, "Okay." I said, "Can you make that easier?" He's like, "Okay, well, maybe we'll just walk to town and back." I said, "Look, can you go out your door, walk to the end of the road and come back to pretend like you're walking to work?" Most people would be listening to me right now and going, "Shaun, what that is not going to do anything at all." You're right. In that moment, that one simple action, in the grand scheme of your physical appearance and everything, is not going to do anything. But the showing up element and giving that action credit and a reward is going to compound into more. Okay. Dopamine is the molecule of more. If we give it these micro wins and we give the micro wins credit, this is where the podcast, it's all started for me with something called daily power lists. That micro win compounds over time. And the effort to do that is a lot smaller. We can all fit in those micro wins. So they're not overwhelming and not over consuming as long as we give them credit, because most people won't. Most people constantly chase the result and not credit the action and the behavior changes that people are going through.
You mentioned overwhelm. And I mean, that is a big thing because we are inundated with information. If I want to just find out about exercise for women in their 50s and I go onto YouTube, I can sit there for years just looking at all the videos and having similar information, but it's not necessarily the right information for me. It's not saying it's wrong information, but for me. So overwhelm is a huge thing, but on top of that is that motivation. Is, as you said, we get bombarded. It's not a lack of knowledge or not a lack of finding the information, but what do we do with this information? You have one person saying women over 50s don't do cardio, do yoga. Don't do yoga, do Pilates. Don't do Pilates, run. Don't run. So you get this constant do this, no, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And this is good for you. No, this is bad for you. No, this actually is good for you. No, this is it. And so what do you do with all this information? And then you've got this overwhelm, and then it's that motivation. So you've got this reams of information. Now what? I found the videos that I can watch, the YouTube or the podcasts. I can watch them. I can listen. I get the information. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Do I really feel like doing it? It's peeing down with rain. Do I want to walk around the block? Do I want to do a down dog pose? So it then comes to, what is the benefits? Yes, we know that we should exercise. It's good for health. We know that we should eat right, and all these shouldings, so that you end up shoulding all over yourself. So it's really, I mean, the physical exercise and eating is a huge, massive area.
Hmm.
And then it's again is, yes, but you should look like this, or you should
Hmm.
look like this, or you should be able to fit into this size outfit, and it's like, where am I in all of this? Where's that human being, that individual, that unique person in all this shoulding and information, and this is good for you, this is bad for
Hmm.
you. So it's a massive field that you've sort of stepped into. It's like a
Oh,
quagmire of
oh
stuff.
man. Honestly, some days, some days I bang my head on the wall. It's interesting to say because actually when I fall asleep, I often have one idea that pops into my head before I fall asleep. And last night I had one, and it's very similar to what you mentioned there about don't do this, don't do that. And I wind down most evenings on social media, scrolling, doom scrolling, which they tell you not to do. Caffeine actually relaxes me, but they tell you not to have caffeine because it picks you up. And I said on, this kind of like a little post that I was going to create, but it's like I'm not telling you to go drink caffeine and doom scroll. I'm telling you that you don't have to listen to them. You need to listen to what works for you. Okay. So I would always often say if somebody is clearly online saying, don't do this, either there's an agenda that it could be to influence to sell, it could be just a deep lying belief that they've missed out the importance of empathy, that we're all different. I do as much as I can. Like I said earlier, I don't like the terminology weight. I think it's really negative. I don't think it defines a person. But there'll be people that will weigh themselves and have a healthy relationship with it, and that's absolutely fine. I never tell my clients, don't weigh yourself. I will just advise around their current relationship and what they need to do. So I would always say, first and foremost, if somebody is physically telling you, don't do this, I would be very, very mindful of their approach and potentially take it with a pinch of salt. Then you mentioned motivation. We Some people might argue with this actually, in which it's absolutely fine. But some people believe we need motivation to get started, right? In any form, even to take any form of action, we need some form of motivation. But what people perceive motivation is motivation has to be big to move forward. Whereas actually, the first thing we need is action, any form of action, which then returns a result, which then returns motivation to take more action to get more results. Now, some people will say, well, yeah, but you still need motivation to get started. If you say, I need motivation to go to the gym 7 days a week, quite a lot of motivation. If you say, I'm just going to have an extra cup of water today, doesn't require much, does it? It's a simple action that requires very minimal motivation. Again, we have to reward that dehydration is a reason why people overconsume food because of low mood and low energy. You can go into that if you want to in a bit, but it requires very minimal effort, very minimal motivation, but a huge compounding return if we see it that way. Now, then you might be asking me, yeah, but so what? It's just water. And that's where a deep purpose comes in. When we talk root cause, a lot of people, when they set goals, play on the surface. They just play it safe. I want to lose weight. I want to get fitter. I want to tone up. Again, so what? So what? You've been doing that for ages. You can wait. You've been waiting a few years. You can wait a few more. It's on the same level as getting milk from the shop, in my opinion. I want to know the real reason why you want to drop weight. Because you could stop eating, become anorexic and lose weight, but you wouldn't be happy. So it's not about weight. There's something more going on there. What is it? Is it confidence? Are you single looking for a partner? Are you, aging and you want to be a great grandparent and you want to live a life that you can go and travel? Let's find out the real reason through questions, through communication, through a safe place. And let's dig a bit deeper because what I've found over the years is when I've had a purpose, I will show up on my worst days. And that doesn't mean going in hard. It just means doing simple tasks consistently because I'm not going to stay down for very long. We have great days, we have low days, but on the low days, I'll still chip away at things on what I'm looking for because now I know what I'm looking for. And that takes away the need for motivation, I find when you really know what you want and you're honest with it as well. I think that's a big part of it.
I think that one of the big challenges that people over time come across, it's like maybe they have motivation in the beginning, maybe they think that they really understand their purpose, and they often overshoot, they overcommit, and they start pushing a bit too much. And we have very limited amount of willpower that we can give things. We can push to a certain level with our willpower. But the moment something changes, the weather, our hormones, our life, or we run out of reasonably limited sources of willpower, that's where then, our motivation out of nowhere is nowhere to be found. And we really struggle to continue with this momentum. And then often it happens that we fall off the wagon, or we skip one session, or we, eat one bigger meal or anything. And then we go into our head, and the amount of punishment that we can do to ourselves and the amount of perfectionism we often put onto our own shoulders. I think those are the things that then, can often cause the yo-yo effect, that we can be so good with, well, like, yes, yo-yo could be with a diet, that you follow a certain diet, you achieve a certain goal, you try to go back to the normal, and obviously the normal brings you back to the weight you were before, or even more, because obviously hormones change, metabolism change, things change with these like up and down weight or body composition things. But I'm curious then, how do you deal with the willpower question? We touched on the motivation already, but then what is it about the momentum with the actions, with the little step, that we can kind of circumvent around the willpower, not needing that? And you touched on with some examples. Could you give us a bit more about how can people start bringing more of these natural little actions to keep the momentum going and not necessarily touch onto their willpower?
Without breaks, without pauses, we have nothing. We have the rebound effect, because we'll be forced into a break if we don't take them, whether that's through burnout, whether that's through injury, whether that's through illness, disease. We will be forced into a break. And in today's world, it's very gung-ho, very badge, medal of honor, to push harder. And I teach this from my clients really early on. I always say it's like riding a wave. When you start, you're excited. You want to get all of your results in that first week or two. And you're up and you're on your board and it's great. But waves come down. And we need to get you off that wave safely so that you enjoy it. You can relax on the beach, and then you want to go back out on your surfboard. Most people don't do that. They come crashing off it because they don't listen to their body. They try and push hard. Guilt, shame, restriction, completely opposite to how the mind works. Doesn't want to be negative. It creates a low mood. There's a very fascinating book called Gut Feelings by Dr. Will Cole, and he talks about shameflammation, and actually how shaming yourself causes inflammation in the body, which then affects your guts and causes severe illnesses. And I do believe that as well, because it's a negative emotion and it's constant negativity bringing you down. So to combat that, it takes work, right? Because humans are ultimately quite negative for our mammal brain to keep us safe. We'd be ignorant not to. So it's quite difficult to reframe that and build a growth mindset. But one thing I do use a lot is I use something called a permission over restriction based approach. Because if somebody is eating a chocolate bar, the chocolate bar isn't the problem. It's over consuming the chocolate bar, which we then want to find out how come, what's the reason you're doing it. But also the shame and the guilt they put on that one bar. It's like, well, if you ate nothing else in your day and you just ate a chocolate bar, you'd lose weight because your calorie deficit is significantly different. So it's the relationship with that item that creates the most problem. And we've been drilled in, like, chocolate's bad, caffeine's bad, sugar's bad, it's all addictive. If it was that addictive, if takeaway foods were that addictive, if sugar was that addictive, how come all three of us are not consuming it right now consistently? Okay, so it's finding out why you're over consuming it, when you're over consuming it, how you're over consuming it. And then I want to look at that problem, because if you solve that, I like my sleep, it literally will go away overnight. So a lot of it is just the relationship you have with what you're doing. Most people come unstuck because they don't know when to break. They don't know necessarily when to reach out for help. I've been pushing really well. I've done enough by myself, like I did with my PT. Now I need some help. Then you can gain some more knowledge, some accountability. But a lot of people come up stuck because they just push, 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 and the brain's like, it ain't happening. I'm going to shut you down. And we're not going back to that place because it wasn't fun. It wasn't enjoyable to be in a heavy calorie deficit, to be killing ourselves in the gym, to be restricting ourselves from our favorite food. Why do I want to go back there? Whereas all we're actually really looking to do is a small calorie deficit that we can do for a period of time, but know that we can have a break as long as we are winning most of the time, because we're not going to win every day. It's impossible.
And I really like that you pointed out the fact that we will fail, or we will make mistakes, or we will, not be perfect all the time. It's absolutely normal. And that we need other people, and we need to accept and acknowledge that this is normal, that it doesn't make us a failure. And admitting this defeat of like, oh, I failed, or I failed again, and coming to ask for help or reaching out to someone else to help us. It's not something to be ashamed of, that, we're not expected to know it all and understand it all and be able to do it all by ourselves. We really need other people. I'd love to talk a bit more about the power of working with a PT or working with someone, of having the accountability, having the guidance, the knowledge, the insight, the encouragement, because there's so much that you as a PT or any coach or any advisor or even a really good friend, peer who can help us, can do for us on top of the actual knowledge base, like share the, again, ins and outs and the basic tricks. There's so much more to it, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I always say, without failure, there's no success. We didn't just get born and become successful. Where did it all go wrong for us? Because at some point they say, children will, toddlers or kids will fall down hundreds of times and they'll never say this is walking is never, it's not for me. They just keep going. Where did we go wrong? But yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there is, especially in today's world, since lockdown, there is a number of different coaches and options out there. Even in PT, there's a variety of different styled PTs that work in specific niches. And it's interesting you brought this up, actually, because my podcast that went out this morning, it was about coaching, and it was about, more so about, look, not everybody is for you. Some people might be listening to this today and going, wow, I love what Shaun's saying. And some people are probably turned off already because, they're not interested, they don't like me, and that's absolutely fine. And that's what I wanted to get across to people is, there is somebody out there for you. You just may need to search or follow a few more people or engage in content. Um, the biggest differences I've seen from coaching to PT, I would say even go as far as the biggest difference is the investment point. A little bit of that I do mean financially, because when we only invest in a small amount of money, we don't see the value in something. That's just human nature. We go to a pound shop, we don't see the value in the item. We'll throw it on the floor, we don't care. We buy a lovely expensive handbag or jacket. Guess what? We're looking after that for a long time. But what I do mean the investment point is, if you invest in personal training, for most people, they're investing, yes, in a body transformation, but they're investing in a workout. How much is it per hour for a workout? Okay, whether there's anything that comes with it, they are investing in a workout. Because I had a session years ago. She needed a chat. There was no way a session was going to do anything. And she said to me at the end, so have I got to pay for that? I was like, what? Because we didn't do a workout, she didn't see the value in the conversation we were having. This was way before I was even into coaching, but I knew she needed that chat at that time. Whereas now, with the behavior change, or if you've got anybody that does like tapping or hypnotherapy, you're paying for something different. You're paying for a solution to your habit problems, your nutrition, your routine. You're more likely to listen to those things than a PT trying to talk to you about those during your workout. So where you invest, if you know what your root cause is, and some people don't, I didn't, obviously, for a long time, so I understand people don't. If you do, you can go and find a coach that will specifically help you with your sleep or your nutrition or something like that. But if not, a lot of coaches that I've had or people that I've worked with has just come from a gut feeling. And your gut, if anyone doesn't know, is directly linked to your brain via two nerves. It's made of the same tissue. There is a reason you have a gut feeling, and I do trust mine because it hasn't let me down yet. Um, and that's how I go by it, is I follow people, I engage, I see coaches, and when I'm ready, I know who that person is. Or I know those three people that maybe then I might have a call with. But I know who they are. And that would be my advice, is if you don't know, is just to go out there and who do you love following? And not necessarily influencers, because sometimes with influencers, you go on their program, it's not them anyway. It's another coach. So I would kind of explore maybe more so the LinkedIn side. You don't get as much in my area and kind of influential side like maybe that you do on Instagram. Trust that gut. It's there for a reason.
And you mentioned influencers. It's, quite often they do have an agenda that they are trying to push through. But there's nothing wrong with that person who's starting up. Because when you started your journey, but you had been a ice hockey player since 5 years old. So you had all those skills, all that knowledge. So it's not only looking for the experts, who've been there for years, or who have the influences and the thousands of followers, and they seem to have these amazing results, and but also, look at the ones who are maybe just starting to come onto the scene. Where are they coming from? What knowledge do they have? Because they could have just been very focused on their fitness or their diet or whatever it is. They know a lot, but they've not pursued that line of work because they were doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, and as you said, it is follow people. You can see where they're coming from. You can get their backstories. You can watch them, meet them and start to find out who they are. Listen to the way they speak or what words they're using, because you'll start to get a feel for what their values are, or where they're coming from, or something. And as you said, it is, listen to your gut. Listen to, how do you feel when you listen to somebody? Do they make you go, oh my word, but I've got to follow them because they're influencers and they are right. Meantime, your little gut is going, beware, enemy, enemy, enemy.
Yeah.
But it might be that person who is maybe new on the scene, or doesn't seem to have as many followers, or maybe they're not so au fait on social media. Just because you don't know or don't like social media doesn't mean you don't know your stuff. And then you might think, oh, but they've only got like 4 or 5 followers. They don't know anything. Is not really true. They might just not know how to do social media, but doesn't mean that they don't understand food, or they don't understand fitness, or they don't understand coaching, or whatever it is. So I love how you've said, look for people, find them. Maybe they've written a book that you can read and see, is this something that you can get into? Or they're not on Instagram, but they're somewhere else, or speak to friends or colleagues and say, do you know somebody who I can speak to? So it is finding out. And in this day and age, we don't really have an excuse not to look for the information. I mean, when I was growing up, you used to have to go to the library. You used to have to go and look into encyclopedia books. I don't know if any of our listeners know what an encyclopedia is. But we used to, I remember fighting over the letter N because, you're researching something. Whereas now you just, you hit Google, or you go on YouTube, fitness, wham, and you get a lot of stuff. And I appreciate we go back to that overwhelm and a lot of information, but start to peel it down. Use your gut to listen to the way somebody's speaking, to listen to what are they doing. Is this somebody you want to go have a cup of coffee with? Or is this somebody you thinking, if I see them walking down the street, I'm crossing the road to avoid them? Well, don't follow them.
Yeah. It's a lot. It is a lot, and especially as the access point into the fitness industry is really low. There's a lot of memberships out there for minimal monthly payments. And again, they can work. They can. I've done low memberships and I've had people do well, but for me personally, it's been a lot less than when people invest in a one-to-one. I call it bespoke because as I get in the headlines, I meet you where you need to be met, not a cookie cutter, not where I just want to talk about habits today, whereas actually you've got a food relationship problem. That's the biggest part of coaching it's about you, it's solving your problem, and it's not just leaving you in limbo or to do by yourself. Some people might want to do it by themselves, and that's great. Learn from me. I believe lone wolf time is important. I spent a long time as a lone wolf, not asking for help, and it's given me resilience, and it's given me knowledge, and it's given me the ability to do things. But I had to give in at some phase, and giving in was one of the best things I did, because I started to understand that I had no foundation in my business. None. I was just a PT at the time. Whereas it's kind of allowed me to evolve and create a foundation for my business through email marketing, through the correct style of website, through branding, through finances, all because one day I said, I can't do this by myself anymore. I need help. And I think that's important to know. I think I'm big admirer of people who are willing to work and do the work by themselves. But please know when that is the time that you do need to outsource and get a coach or just somebody to do something for you. I think that's very, very important.
I mean, as the saying goes, no man is an island, and it is very much, do have the help. I spent many years on my own thinking I had to do it on my own. And if I needed help, I was a failure and, issues. But the thing is we can do a lot on our own, but also it's more fun having somebody in your corner or somebody with you who can help you, and you get a different perspective because they'll come up they see things differently, and there might be something that you can do that you hadn't thought of. So yeah, asking for help is or having that help or that support or that encouragement, but have somebody in your corner. It is well worth it. You can still be a lone wolf as well. You can actually do both. One of the things is we can go on for hours talking about this because, health, fitness, exercise, good food is a massive thing. And it's like a topic that can just go on for ages and ages and ages. This is the time in the episode where we love to get those gold nuggets, those pearls of wisdom. Hop onto our Patreon account to get access to this amazing gold nugget. So people have been listening to you and they're thinking, I need to get into Shaun's circle. I need to know a bit more about him, or I want to start to follow him because he suggested that I need to start following different people to see if they're the right person. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn is where I spend pretty much all my day. I'm not as bad as I used to be. I was really bad last year. I've had a little bit of a detachment this year, but I love it there because again, LinkedIn's been part of my journey as well. It's brought me things that I never really knew that I needed. It's brought me friends that I never knew that I'd find. Um, a lot of people talk ill of it, but for me, it's done what it needed to do. So I give a kind of a lot back to the community there as well through networking and support. So 100% there. And I do have my own podcast as well, which is called Always Another Game. It's about the transfer of skills from your sporting career, your sporting background, and how you utilize that in life away from the game, whether that's parenting, business, or personal development. Funnily enough, and I do my own episodes, and then I talk to other athletes, current and retired, about their stories as well. So, I wanted to kind of continue my coaching through my sporting journey because it was only kind of a few years after retiring that I realized I knew it was a big part of my life, but it had such a big impact that I wasn't using in parenting, in business, in personal development. And when those pieces of the puzzle came together, again, it was just another level of the coaching and that transfer of skills, which has really helped me with a number of my successful business clients who aren't taking care of their health. I can take what they're good at and teach them a new topic, and then my life and their life is a lot easier.
And we will have all the links in the description so that people can click on that and follow you or get in touch with you or just see what you're all about. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your time with us. and just giving us information in Shaun Thompson's way and your perspective, because this is a great thing. Is, you know, fitness and health is almost a dime a dozen, but it's really getting to where you coming from and your understanding of it. And it's coming from, as an ice hockey player, you know, it's a totally different perspective than somebody else. So thank you for that. It's been really fascinating to listen to you and to have you here with us on our little Into Your Life podcast that we've got. Not so little anymore. It's actually growing really nicely. And for our listeners, what have you got from today? Is getting fit something that you want to focus on, especially as we're going into autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, or are you going into spring in the Southern Hemisphere? What is your thoughts on food, on mindset, on exercise? Have you thought about it all coming together? And how do you feel about all these shouldings that come with the fitness industry, that you should do this, you should do that, or you can't do that, or don't do that, that's bad for you, that's good for you, no, that's bad for you. And all this information that we get thrown is, how do you feel about it? Or are you one of these fantastic people who found what works? We would love to hear your story on fitness and health. What's working? What's not working? Because you have your own way of doing things, your own uniqueness that you found. And if you haven't found it yet, you know, do reach out to Shaun. I'm sure he'd love to have a conversation with you, or just share with us your journey. We'd love to hear. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.